Executor has an often overlooked passive ability called Tenacity, that boosts his damage by 20% each time a status effect wears off of Executor himself. It's a strange condition, but one weapon skill, Seppuku, insta-procs Bleed and does exactly that. Funny thing is that Tenacity is stackable. And don't forget that we have a ton of Bleed build up on top of all that. Let's see what this build can do. The first relic is obviously the one that turns our weapon skill into Seppuku instead of Unsheath. Sadly, there is no guaranteed relic with such effects yet, and you're gonna have to roll one. If you somehow manage to get a starting weapon inflicts bleed effect along with it, then congratulations, you have truly beaten this game. This is the best possible combo you can get. To add even more spice, let's also use Dark Knight of the Miasma and get a built-in Frostbite. Now we have two status effects at once. The invisibility proc from Frostbite is also quite useful, as it's gonna help us sneak even more attacks after enemies lose you from their sight right in the middle of a fight. Lastly, since I'm already aimed at a highly optimized build, let's finish it up with an Evagel relic. I am not a fan of it and would often choose to run something else, but the way it multiplies with tenacity stacks is crazy. For example, 5 gel stacks give you 27 damage percent bonus on their own. 3 tenacity stacks give you 72 damage percent bonus on their own. But if you have them at the same time, all these numbers turn into a total of 120% damage bonus. One problem with tenacity is that yes, theoretically it can be stacked infinitely, but each stack has its own duration. And by the time you use Seppuku 4 times in a row, you'd only have a couple of seconds of the first stack remaining and you'd effectively make use of only 3. But still, let me amaze you with some more numbers. On paper, if you had 7 jail and 4 tenacity stacks at the same time, you'd be doing nearly 3 times your regular damage. And it is without all the other buffs, and not accounting the bleeding frost procs. This is just crazy. Now, I chose Darkdrift Night Expedition because Fulghor is the most susceptible to status effects among all the Night Lords. But you can confidently take this on any boss, outside of maybe Healthor, cause he's immune to all that, but you still can make use of the bonus damage of all the stacks. Before the fight begins, we're gonna use Seppuku a comfortable amount of times to stack tenacity. For me it's usually 2 or 3 times. Then heal up and destroy whoever it is you face much faster than you'd expect. Remember all the numbers I've counted earlier? Well, this was only 2 tenacity and 0 jails, so 44% damage bonus. Now, I'm gonna go and take it even further by upgrading our weapon and then moving to a much more dense area on the map. At the end of day 1, we're expected to have a purple katana, 4 to 5 jails done, and the majority of field bosses cleared. And then we'll have the whole second day to clear out the entire Rotted Woods. That's the game plan. This part of the map is probably my favorite due to how close all the good things are here. We have 3 jails in relatively close proximity, and 2 field bosses 1 jump away from each other. It's a heaven for builds where your whole plan is just to fight as much as possible. And on top of that, here are also not 1 but 2 mines to get smithing stones from if you need them. Not a really obvious thing is that your tenacity stacks don't go away when turning into a beast. An even less obvious thing is that your current weapon affinity doesn't go away after turning into a beast. It is a total opposite to how Suncatcher works though. As I've already said in my previous Executor video, using Deflect removes the active affinity like Chill and Mist or any grease from your weapon. But the beast form doesn't. You can use Seppuku, go beast mode, then calm down, and you're still gonna have your bleed affinity. The game is quite generous with purple jail bosses in this run, and it's nice to sit on such a high level this early. Now that I'm done with all the bosses and jails on this part of the map, I'll go for a smithing stone and rotate to another area. The circle will probably start moving by that time, so we'll improvise with the next steps on the spot. I noticed the merchant's shack and the last accessible jail are in the same place, which is very convenient for me. I'm gonna go there to clean up the jail, upgrade my katana to the purple rarity, and buy a ritual sword talisman which will boost my overall damage by additional 10% at max HP. The merchant at the shack always sells it, and I always make sure to buy this talisman. You can never go wrong with it. No matter how much I play with this build, I'll never stop getting surprised by how much damage it deals. Anyway, for day 2 I have a goal to fully clear the entire Rotted Woods, every single red boss that it has inside. But before that, I'll make one small detour to the Scalebearer merchant that I saw being very close to me on the map. I won't even look at his deals, I just want to fight him too. I will even get rewarded with a talisman for defeating him. Something like Lord of Blood's Exaltation would fit a bit too well into this build. The choices for talismans are surprisingly good, but ironically I got Windsword Insignia right before this fight, and thus already have an almost perfect lineup of talismans. Gold Scarab would have made sense much earlier into the run, but not right now. Well, since we're done here, let's move straight into Rotted Woods, cause we're probably gonna need the whole second day if our goal is to complete it entirely. If it wasn't so, I would have definitely made a stop at the castle, but I've never managed to get all 6 bosses there before, and wanted it to be a small extra challenge for this run. By the way, I accidentally found out that you don't really have to do the objective at the local fort to get access to this main flower that you need to solve this event, and that you can run straight to it as soon as you see it. There's only 3 spots where the flower can spawn, so in terms of time saving it's much more beneficial to just check those while fighting the bosses, instead of making a whole one more detour. Let me point out my own mistakes so that you won't repeat them yourself. Now that I'm rewatching the footage, I'm noticing that I often don't heal up completely after the seppuku routine, which nullifies the effect of the ritual sword talisman. This is a mistake, and missing out on free damage. Don't be like this unless you really want to save an extra use of your flask. Well, it doesn't hurt to check whether you got keys before trying to open an Ever jail. Anyways, turns out I did have time for the castle back then before the woods. Now I have pretty much nothing to do. I can check the last treasure chest in hopes of the last key. Aside of that, I can only mess around killing small mobs just because I can. At this point, Fulghor is a coffin baby against this build. I got 5 out of 6 jails, I got my tenacity, I bought every consumable that can theoretically buff me, and I used so much of them before the fight that I think some of them cancelled each other out. One important thing though is that I will two-hand my katana to be ready for when he goes into his signature stance. I don't have any lightning on me, so I'll have to brute force him out of it. I found out that two-handed R2 plus R1 does just enough stance damage to do so. Well, this might be my favorite build in the whole game. If you've never played Executor, this is your sign to do it. I hope you like this run, please like, subscribe and write a comment, all these things help my channel grow very much. GG and thank you for watching.